We love shooting, hunting, and educating. So if you want to learn about long-range shooting, you're in the right place. This is the Long Range Addicts Podcast. Shooter ready, stand by.
What up, everybody? Great Thursday afternoon here. We appreciate you joining us. We're going to be doing a lot of different things here on the podcast we're excited about. We're going to be doing something today with long range tactics. We got a couple of guys joining us. We're going to kind of go through some things we've heard in the last little bit, talk about them, shoot the bull, stuff like that. We're going to add this to the podcast every other week so that, if you don't get it while it's live, you can download it on the Long Range Addicts podcast later and listen to it while you're going down the road or doing whatever you're doing. First off, I want to thank our biggest sponsor right now, Primary Arms. Primary Arms has come on with the Firearms Radio Network. They came to us. They said, hey, we want to sponsor. We want to do a lot of things with you guys. So we're excited about that. We're going to try some of their new long-range scopes. And looking at the Primary Arms site, I'll be honest, I didn't know a whole lot about them, but looking through it, it's amazing the stuff that they've got. It's kind of a one-stop shop for about anything you can think of. They went from just selling optics to about anything you can buy. So check out Primary Arms. Tell them Long Range Addicts sent you, and let us know what you think. I'm going to get started, and as we go, I'm going to shout out to some of our other sponsors. We've got some great sponsors coming to the show. We're getting noticed. We appreciate it. There's a lot of you that are listening. Last time I heard we were close to, if not over 100,000 downloads. In 30 episodes, that's phenomenal. And with all the podcasts out there, we truly appreciate all of you joining us. And I'm excited. I mean, we've got a lot more to do. We've got a lot of things to talk about. We got a lot of education to do. And that's why we're going to start doing this with long range tactics, because these guys are the cream of the crop when it comes to learning and understanding long range, whether it be hunting or shooting or whatever else. But let's introduce the guys again. Justin joining us again. How you doing, Justin?
Doing pretty good. Thanks for having me on.
Yep, always. I'm just glad you're here. Chocolate milk, hanging out. The old lady let you come on with us. Good time.
She's out shopping for soccer stuff for kids, so I got the way better into this deal.
Yeah, but your freaking checkbook probably didn't. I bet it's going down.
It all disappears every month anyway.
Yeah, I'm digging the hat. I need to get one of those. I need to get a bighorn, actually. It's one of the only actions I don't own.
Well, I want them to have the new. I bought this one shortly after I bought my first TL2, and now I've got the Rim X. I want an actual Zermatt hat. I need to call them and see if they have any.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need to start bugging them. We need to try and get them on the podcast and talk to them about that.
I think they join.
They've come out with a lot of stuff. They've done a lot of branding changes. They've changed a lot of crap, so it's interesting. Next up, JS Jonathan Solinsky. How you doing, buddy?
I can't complain too much. Always can find something to complain about, but I can't complain too much.
Every time you come on, your freaking background changes. Look at all that shit he's got going on back there.
I got way too much shit in here. That's what I got.
He's got freaking trophies and all sorts of stuff. That's sweet.
More ammo and I know what to do with.
Well,
that's not true, but enough.
No, that's not true right now. You're way off beat, because I keep getting asked, hey, do you got any primers that you can let me borrow? No, because I don't know when I'm going to get any more, so I don't dare let you borrow any.
Yeah, but mine's weird shit. Like those 3 shelves you see over my right shoulder that are all symmetrical and stuff. That's all 22 TCM. I got a pistol in it, and so I went to 2 local gun shops and bought every box they had. So yeah.
Yeah, I got you. Well, that's the thing is, I bought a long time ago. So my dad used to hunt deer it was like one of the ultimate long range cartridges way back when, but it was the 32 special. And a lot of people don't know what it is, but it's a lever action cartridge, straight wallet, and I've had a hard time finding it, but I was here local the other day in this old, it's like an old hardware store. And I was walking down the thing, and all of a sudden there's all these boxes of this old Remington ammo sitting on the shelf. And it's the only thing on the shelf. It was 32 special. I'm like, you got to be freaking kidding me. That's one of those hit the jackpot deals.
Yeah, and it's weird talking to local gun shops too, because they started selling guns and a lot of those weird off-brand calibers because everything else either got expensive or disappeared. And so
Right.
people all of a sudden started buying used guns and these weird calibers because it was the only thing they could find. I mean, I've been seeing is it 18 gauge?
16
12,
gauge probably, or 28.
no, there's another weird one that's been showing up at like Walmart that I'd never even seen at Walmart before, but it's the only thing sitting on their shelf.
A shotgun ammo?
Yeah, it's a big, actually, I want to say I've got some
Because like
somewhere.
Justin, I've only heard of like 18, 12, 20.
16,
There is an 8
28,
gauge.
410.
I think it's 18 gauge, but
Uh,
like I keep seeing it at Walmart, never seen it there before.
uh,
Probably because it's the only thing they can get in stock.
Somebody's lied to whoever's building it. It's like
I'm gonna
you'd
say
think
they
that
put a
whoever's
misprint on
building,
the item.
yeah, it's like whoever's building that ammo. It's like why would you waste your time building that and not build something that somebody's buying a crap
Oh,
ton?
it's probably a pallet sitting in the back of a warehouse that's been there since like 1995. They're just like, ooh, ammo in stock, and they buy it. They don't even know what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of those things, man. I keep it's funny because I was in one of the local stores the other day and these guys were just hovering. You could tell they were at the shelf and they were looking, out of the corner of their eye. They're just kind of playing with stuff on the shelf and they're kind of keeping their eye over on the counter, And then all of a sudden, this guy walks out the box. They start stalking it, and dude, it's like freaking maggots on a dead pig. Like they
Oh,
all
yeah.
just ran over. Every one of them got on their phone trying to call, and it was just cheap crap 9mm bulk ammo. But man, they were on it like it sucks to see that though. It really does.
I mean, at least you can get away with that with pistol. Like, as long as it goes bang, it really doesn't matter. Then you start shooting long range stuff, and like, it matters. And you're like, oh, there's crap stuff available for a cheap price. And you're just like, I can't do it. It doesn't
Yep.
matter. Like, I can't shoot that stuff.
Yeah, I've had a bunch of people come to me lately. They're like, "Hey, what are your 9mm loads?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Whatever the book tells me. Why?" They're like, "Well, we're trying to find the most accurate load." I'm like, "In a 9? What are you shooting with it? Are you trying to pull a Jerry Michalek and shoot 1,000 yards, or like what? What is your goal of shooting?" Oh no, we just want to go to the range and shoot still.
Yeah.
So
3 gun.
why are you worried? Just figure out what powder you've got, go to the book and find a middle of the road charge and go for it. You know what I mean? That's one of those I've never really understood, but maybe somebody has fun building ammo for it. But right now,
Yeah.
it's like, and I kind of wanted to hit that today. It's like, what are your guys's? And I know Justin doesn't shoot matches, but you do a lot of just, shooting in general. You go out and shoot at the range, but like, I know you're shooting more 22, Jonathan, but like, are you going to do any center fire this year because of the shortage, or what are you doing?
Oh, my plan's to do center fire. I'm working on a 223 build right now that has been in the works for the last 12 months. Yay. Hopefully we'll be done here in the next month or two. But mainly because I've got a fairly large stockpile of 77 grain match. So that allows me to train and shoot tactical class. And then I've got a buddy of mine that does loading for like bullseye competition that hopefully will be loading me up some like 80 or 85.5s, the new burgers, to run for like an open class load for that 223 gun. So that's my plan because, I mean, like you said, this is not a year for people to get into PRS.
No.
Like, I don't think anybody even can get into PRS unless they've got some angel mentor that's just going to gift them 1,000 primers and casings and whatever else they need. Because I mean, barrels are on a 6 to 12 month back order. Some of the higher end chassis are on a 6 month back order. Actions are on an 8 month back order. Ammo's non-existent, and if it is existent, it's $80 a box for 6.5 at my local gun shop. So no one's buying 100 rounds of that stuff to go shoot a match.
No, and I think that's what my plan is this year is just shoot a couple local, 1-day matches. And we've been trying to plan a prairie dog shoot, but I'm like, I don't know if I want to shoot prairie dogs. Freaking primers cost. I don't know if I can get any more primers to shoot little freaking things. I'm gonna have to get my 22s out and try and lob them or something at them. I don't know what I'm gonna do either, but I know
Try and
most
go
of the
do that
2-day matches
Saturday.
You got prairie dogs up there?
I'm gonna go to a spot that a buddy turned me on to. He said it was good a few years ago, so we're gonna go for a drive and see if we can't find any. I've got 200 rounds for the 22 Creed, 200 rounds for the 223, and thousands of 22 rounds. So if we find them, we'll waste some money.
Nice.
I know up there, because I've been wanting to take the bus up there and do it, but there's a lot of those little ground squirrel things. Do you guys have a lot of those little things?
Yeah, we used to go shoot them. Kind of around Memorial Day is when they were the best because the snow had kind of melted in the high desert. We laid in one spot in the road the one year and shot for 5 hours straight. Like it was just a blood bath in that whole little valley. It was awesome. And then it's
Freaking
never
bird
been the
watching.
same since. We've gone back and killed, 100 or so, but I mean, we killed hundreds of them that year. It was so fun.
Apparently, you overkilled them.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're like the plague, right? They come and go. So I think it's just kind of an off year when I went back. And then I haven't done it for a couple of years. I haven't gone over there. Instead, we do rock chucks. So we're in the spots we go chuck hunting, we generally have to hike in 20 to 30 minutes. So you don't run into anyone else because no one else is stupid enough to do that for rock chucks.
Better, I don't know. It's better than still though. But that's the thing is, it's like rabbits. Rabbits go on that cycle of it's like 3 years or 5 years. I can't remember what it is, but then they come back big time and then they all die off and then they come back big time. And yeah, that's crazy. I know coyotes are denned up right now. They're mating. So I don't know. I'm not that kind of person that I like to go shoot coyotes when they're denned up. I love shooting coyotes, but that's not, a lot of people love doing it. I don't, but
If I see coyotes this weekend, I'm shooting at them.
you just need to turn on a little frickin' howl and they'll get pissed and here they come because you're in their
Yeah.
frickin' territory.
I don't know that I'll take calls, but if I see them, they better be running.
It's always coyote season. That's how it is in the middle of the elk hunt. Shit, there's an elk. Well, there's 2 coyotes. Which one do I shoot at?
Always a coyote hunt. You see coyotes, everything turns into a coyote hunt.
Exactly.
That's why you run a can, because then you can shoot at all 3.
No, they're still smart, man. They're out here. They're shot at so much that they hear anything weird. I mean, they're smart enough now that people shoot at them out of their trucks, so they know even a truck slowing down. They're like crows. They just take off as soon as a truck starts slowing down. So they've got real smart.
It's when you stop. So the best way to do it, slow down and have the passenger bail out, and then the truck just drives away, and then you can go throw a bag over the fence post and drill them because they'll keep watching the car. They don't even pay attention to the guy who bailed out. But if you get all the way stopped, they're done.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell us you just do it at you practice your movers doing that.
I was going to say, I thought he was going to say like going 5 miles an hour just straight out the window.
No, but I'm telling you, the best trick I ever learned, whoever's driving slows down, 2-3 miles an hour, just enough the other guy can bail out. And then you drive off a couple 100 yards down the road and that coyote will just watch the truck the whole time. They don't even pay attention to the guy who smokes them.
Well, there you go, folks. You learned it here first. Justin's telling you these freaking hunting tricks. So I guess, Justin, here's the thing. You've been doing a lot of 22 stuff recently too.
Yes,
You've been getting lucky. You've been getting lucky finding some ammo and different things. Help some of our listeners kind of get an idea how they can find some of that. I don't know, maybe both of you got ideas. I know I just got an email that all the Lapua stuff that I ordered is on its way. So I'm excited about that. But what are your guys' tricks? Like, what do you look for? Where are you looking?
I look at ammo seek generally because it's Google for ammo, right? And then a lot of the little Facebook groups, like once someone gets their fill of the ammo they want, they'll post up and say, hey, it's available here. And you have literally 50 minutes tops.
Oh, if that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's kind of how I've been lucky to score it. And I only try and buy 1,000 rounds at a time so that other people can end up having some too. And now I've got a stash that's built big enough. I don't need any through the summer probably. But yeah, like I sent links to a buddy the other day. I'm like, hey, here's some. I was like, great, I'll buy it tonight. I'm like, no, you won't. You'll buy it now or you won't get it.
Yeah.
And then you gotta be willing to pay a little more money. Like I've been lucky. The couple places I've bought from haven't been gouging, but like Midway, when did they become cheaper than dirt? Like they wanted what, $125 for SK Standard last time they had it in stock, and I paid $65 for it the week before.
Larry's an entrepreneur, old Larry Potterfield
I mean, I
himself.
understand supply and demand, but some of these places are just ripping you off because they know it's pure profit for them. I get it, but it's frustrating when you know you can find it somewhere else if you're willing to be a little more patient.
Well, and that's the thing that a lot of people need to understand is a lot of that ammo, like Lapua, went up 10%. So over last year, they're still selling it at the same price. It's just up to 10%. But all the companies that are getting it with supply and demand they're the ones making tons of money on it now, and the distributors and everybody else is jacking the prices up, which sucks. But I mean, what do you do about it? That's how it goes. What about you, John?
The Facebook groups are a really good lead to find the stuff, just like Justin said. Like somebody will buy their fill and then they throw it up on a Facebook group. But you've got, I wouldn't even say 50 minutes. I would say you've probably got about 15 before they're pushing limits, depending on how much they get. I mean, most of our listeners probably saw the Mid-South shooting supply fiasco, because their genius idea was they got like a whole bunch of 6.5 Creedmoor in, 3 different types of 22 primers, and they put it all on their website at the same time, and their website crashed. So that was interesting because you had like 4,000 people trying to order either 6.5 primers or 22 on a website that had never seen that much traffic before. It took me 15 minutes to get my cart to open up, and by the time I hit checkout, they were gone. Like everything I put in my cart was already sold.
Sounds like Utah's draw frickin' application last year is a frickin' joke.
For the elk hunt.
Yeah, stupid.
But the one thing I would say with the supply and demand that people kind of overlook, especially for the local gun shops, because I know a lot of local gun shops out here, and they're having to up their prices mainly to pay the bills. Like, yeah, they're charging, and they're not getting a necessarily higher margin, but they're charging a lot more than they used to. But it's because they're not getting cases of ammo in anymore. They're getting boxes. Like my local gun shop near me just got their first shipment of 6.5 Creedmoor in 6 months. They got 4 boxes of 140 grain ELD match.
Really?
So if they made $2 a box, they might as well not even stock it. Like that's $8. Like, ooh, they made $8 for a 6-month wait. Like that covers an employee for a half hour, and that's going to be all the 6.5 they get for the next 5 months. Like,
right? That is stupid. But when I worked through this last time at Barnes, and that's the funny thing I keep hearing is, well, they're not, they're holding it back. And what a lot of people need to realize is they're working as fast as they can. They still only have the same amount of machines. They still only have the same amount of people. I mean, Barnes has started to put up billboards. They're starting to do all sorts of stuff because they're so far behind. They're running back before, and I don't know what they're doing now. We ran 3 shifts 7 days a week to try and keep up, and we couldn't do it. I mean, we ran and ran and ran because we still didn't have more machines. It was still trying to do the same thing. We just had to try and add more people to get to the same point. But there's a lot of things that I'd like to talk about with powders and primers that a lot of people don't know that I could probably shed some light on. Maybe they do know. But what a lot of people don't realize is most of like the Hodgson Extremes and some of those powders aren't done in the United States. They're done either in Australia or they're done, Norway, Sweden, places like that, to where everything has to be imported. And the way that they're changing the import laws and the rules, it's killing us. And I would love to have somebody figure out how to do it. Same thing with primers. I had a meeting the other day with one of the big ammo companies over some stuff, and they're like, one of our container ships with like 10 containers or whatever it was with primers is sitting in a port in Europe, and they won't let it go. It's locked down, and they're trying to mess with, the ability to get that kind of stuff. And they're getting smart. And that's the scary thing, honestly, about how all this is coming about, because they're starting to figure out they can control it without passing laws to control it, if that makes sense. And I don't know. It's just a scary thought in my mind, and it's always got me a little worried, and I don't want to create any more panic or fear. But a lot of your stuff, it can be controlled with import laws. That's the scary thing.
Well, and the cost too. Like, cost has gone up because of the pandemic and the riots and like all that stuff and supply and demand. But now we're seeing material costs for all metals. I mean, copper's gone up, what, 40% in the last couple of months? That hasn't even hit ammo yet because they're still loading projectiles they made 4 years ago. Wait until they start loading or trying to make bullets out of copper at the current cost or brass at the current cost. And then you add in diesel prices going up and shipping prices go up. And like, I don't know. I mean, I don't think prices are going to come down anytime soon, even if supply goes up.
Right.
And Europe's back in lockdown, which for 22, most of it's made in Europe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy watching that. And that was another kind of scary thing was Remington. At Remington's peak, this will blow your mind. They were running over 1,022 rounds a day. So with Remington gone, that shows you how much the 22 market has hurt recently because the rest of them can't fill that.
Yeah.
That loss. So, and I just heard today that Remington finally, or Vista, which is Federal, reopened the plant and it's back up and running now. So hopefully that will really influx a bunch of ammo. I hope. I mean that plant is state of the art, badass, huge. Can put out a lot of ammo, and hopefully they can do it. But I know, now that Federal controls a lot of the market on primers, it's going to be interesting to see, how us little people get primers from now on. It's going to be It's going to be a little interesting because everywhere I look with primers is the scariest. How would you guys rank it? I think it goes primers at the top, powder, and then bullets. Wouldn't you guys say that?
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking for
powder and
reloading
bullets are kind of
components,
the same, though. I think they're both, but primers are by far the worst.
Oh yeah, especially small rifle.
yeah, because I think especially with powder and bullets, you can kind of scavenge other stuff that's kind of like worst case scenario consistent. Like you can pull bullets off of something and make the powder charges more consistent with like 77 grain match, right? I can pull the projectiles, load fresh powder, or not fresh powder, but like make all the powder loads consistent and reseat the bullets, and it's But if you don't have primers, like you can't hand load anything.
Yeah, that's going to be the scariest thing, and we're going to see exactly how it all plays out. I really hope that this settles down and we can all get out shooting again, and we ain't going to worry about it. But I don't know how this is going to all freaking go with the way it's going. I was going to bring up the long range tactics page because I want to kind of go over some of the questions in there. Let's go over this first, though. So Long Range Tactics has joined up with Kelbley's Burris Field Optics, Tally, and Spark Munitions to do a giveaway. It's valued at over $4,000. It's a Kelbley's Coda rifle. Jose did a review on it, shot it. The thing shoots a half minute with factory ammo. It shoots phenomenal. And
was that the one he did a hunt like as the first day he shot it?
Yeah. So we're giving that gun away. That's going to be in the giveaway. So whoever walks away with it's going to have an entire package to go hunt this fall or do whatever they're going to do. But yeah, he shot it and he loved it. So we definitely want to thank everybody at Kelbley's and Burris and everything for joining us and doing it. But go check it out. It's on the Long Range Tactics group or longrangetactics.com. I want to scroll down. I want to go through some of these questions and see what you guys think. Of course, there's always the best scope out there. Let me ask you guys this. Let me talk about this for a minute. Let me holler at you. So everybody keeps asking me about these, the best scopes on the market. I keep hearing about, this scope, this March scope, or this Athlon, or this or that. But the way I look at it, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, when I go shoot a match, I see none of those at a match. None of them. And I'm kind of getting to that point. I'm like, so is it because no one has really figured out how to use them in a match? Or is it maybe that somebody has used them and they just don't work? Or have we just got stuck in a rut so long that we only use a certain number of scopes that's how it is? Because in my mind, matches kind of set the precedence for the way scopes are because you're putting them to the ultimate test on how they hold up, right? So what are your guys' opinion on that?
Well, for me, I think it comes down to application, which is kind of one of the things I went on that. I commented on that string that went around earlier on best scope because they listed brands, not scopes. I can find a bottom of the line Night Force that a Razor HD will be better than. That doesn't mean Vortex is better than Night Force. It just means I went for a top tier versus a bottom tier. But it also depends on application. You hear March a lot. March was the pinnacle for high power. They had a really good high power scope that a lot of people liked, but it was super expensive. You don't ever see them at PRS matches because they don't have the reticle, or at least from what I've seen, I haven't seen any of them with a reticle that would work really well for PRS in a price range. And it also comes down to kind of warranty. PRS guns are getting thrown around a lot. And a lot of companies are starting to catch up with Vortex's warranty because they started losing market share. But just like 3-gun, a lot of guys in 3-gun run Vortex because they're throwing their rifle into a barrel. Well, if they shear off a turret for a Night Force is going to be like, so you're going to give us our credit card number for the repair on the warranty, right? And they're going to charge you for a new scope, where Vortex isn't going to do that. But that all comes down to application. Bullseye rifle, completely different. You'll see we ran Night Force competitions that were like 7-32 or something ridiculous. Second focal plane had a super crisp or a super fine crosshair with like a diamond in the center. It's never going to work for PRS, but I don't want a Horus for Bullseye 1,000-yard competition. So I think application has everything to do with the best scope, and then that varies on personal preference between brands.
Right.
Also
What do you got,
depends
Justin?
on who you're sponsored by.
Yeah,
right.
that too.
And I don't say that rude. Like, so for example, I think I got a call us sitting on that rifle right now. Right. I love that scope. If Night Force comes to me and says, "Will you run a Night Force instead?" and we pay you money, absolutely, I'd run a Night Force. I got Night Forces on my other guns, right? And so best is also the one thing I dislike about the long range shooting community right now is everyone thinks that it's centered around PRS. And while I
Yeah.
agree that PRS has drove a lot of it, it's the loud stepbrother, right? Like, yes, there's a lot of money going into it, but it's still a very small percentage of the total shooters. And so they're sponsored heavily by what, 3 or 4 optics companies, where they sponsor shooters, they sponsor matches, and people gravitate towards those. And they also do it because they work, right? Like,
Yeah.
you can go shoot it with an Athlon. I think it's going to be fine. You can go shoot it with a low end Burris or a low end Vortex. You go shoot it with whatever, right? But best to me is like a truck. What's best half-ton truck? It doesn't freaking matter. Like, what do you like better about a Ford versus a Chevy versus a Dodge? Like, they all have things that are a little bit different. They're all good trucks. And so I look at it like Jonathan said, where you've got different tiers of optics. So in that $1,500 to $2,000 range, which is where I start to consider like just awesome scopes, right? Like, you get what you pay for. They're awesome. And I'm not saying you have to spend that much, but you spend that much and you get a quality product. You've got the Mark V, you've got the NX8, you've got the NXS. You can start to find used Colossus in that price range, right? Well, a lot of guys will say, well, Mark V's best. A ton of others say the NX8's the best. When you boil it down to what they're using it for, they could probably interchange them 100%. It wouldn't matter. I pick most of my scopes based off reticles because once you get into that certain price range, I feel the turrets are going to track properly. Glass is adequate in any of them. I mean, if there's a glaring glass problem, I'm going to skip it, but they just generally don't happen. So for me, it's reticle. And then resell to some degree as well. Like, I don't want to go spend $2,000 on a scope that I can only get $1,100 for if I sell it the next day. And some of those optics just don't hold resale as well. So hey, I don't think there is a best, right? If you buy high-end Night Force, a Leupold Mark V, a Burris XTR3, get into the Collis range, high-end Athlon, they're good scopes. They'll work for what you need them to do. Pick what you like best.
Right.
Yeah.
And see, my problem is, if you see back here, I've been sponsored by US Optics forever. They've been one of the most phenomenal sponsors that I could have ever asked for. I mean, they've been above and beyond. But my biggest problem is now that I start to, and this is what I want to recommend to y'all listening, is quit freaking asking the question online and go get behind them, because my eye is bad. My right eye is worse for some reason than my left eye, and they're starting to get worse and worse. But looking through some of these scopes, they completely look different to me in the way the parallax, in the way the eye box works, in the way everything works. And like, Tyler sold his USO and went and bought a Loophole, and I'm like, hey, I want to see it. I want to see exactly what makes this scope so much better than what I've got, and it is cheaper. I could buy 2 of the Mark V's for what I can buy one of these other scopes for. But I looked through it and I just didn't like it. But I think one of the bigger reasons why I didn't like it was the reticle he had. But I've looked through some of the other scopes, some of the Night Forces, like the Attacker and stuff, and I'm like, holy crap! I mean, these are just phenomenal scopes. If I were starting all over again at the start, I definitely wouldn't be asking online, what would you recommend the best scopes? I'll give you a couple recommendations, but in the end, you've really either got to go to a match or you need to go to a sporting goods store, say, hey, I want to look at these, but let's walk outside so I can really check them out. Because it boggles my mind how many people just go off of what somebody else tells them and then they don't realize the difference. Hopefully that
But
too
I would
big of a
also say
tangent.
they get into that upper range. I think they're going to be happy with whatever they buy, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I think so many people think theirs is the best, because they're nice, and they're a hell of a lot nicer than anything they had before. Grandpa's old VX2 3-9 Loophole gets smoked by anything they're looking at that's in the higher price range. Heck, even like the sub $1,000 price range. Look at how good the optics have increased there. Like 10 years ago, it was a crapshoot. Now you can buy a really good scope for under $1,000.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing, is tracking and everything else. But it's crazy how so much, like you said, this has changed, but it's exciting to see people get excited when they go out and get their, inside the group, they go get this new scope. It's the best thing they ever shot. And I want to do a shout out real quick to the Long Range Tactics group, because it is different. Because in a lot of other groups, you put like, oh, I've got this Athlon or I've got something else, and all the fanboys come in and just bash the shit out of you. And that's what's nice about the Long Range Tactics page or the group is, we don't allow any of that shit. So you come in, you post your stuff, we congratulate you, great job, we love it. If it's great for you, if it's what you can afford, good, because that's, you're coming in, you're getting into long range shooting. And if somebody really gives a shit about what they say, it's, hey, we want to, expand the growth of the sport and everything else. And by knocking people down, you're not expanding that growth at all, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know. I get off on tangents like that. It just irritates me when all these fanboys start, attacking some of the guys that have saved up their money, and it's what they can afford and it's what they are. So I guess long story short, take your time, look through glass, find what you like and what you can afford. And if you do ask the freaking question in the damn group, give them a freaking budget, because it doesn't do any good to ask them what the best glass is and you got a budget of $500
and an application.
Yeah, what you're using it for.
Because to Jonathan's point, totally different scopes for bench rest versus NRL 22 or hunting. And even within hunting, are you hunting out of a stand in Texas where you drive right up to it? Or are you 10 miles back in Alaska at 11,000 feet on some crazy peak chasing sheep? Totally different applications, right? So both matter, budget and application.
Right.
And on the flip side of that, though, don't just recommend to people the scope you own. That's one thing that drives me. They're like, oh, the insert whatever scope is the first good one they bought. And they just need like some self-validation that they didn't get screwed or pick the wrong one. And so they're trying to convince everybody that they should run that scope. Drives me nuts. Don't be that guy if you're listening.
Right. And I hope US Optics doesn't hear this, but I went and bought some Burruses. I bought that Burrus XTR3 because, Jose, that's all he does is talk about it. Yeah, they've added him, but, he shot a lot of scopes. One of the first times I ever met Jose, he saw me in Colorado shooting one of my USOs that I blew up and destroyed during that same match. But he saw it, and I, told him that this is the scope that he needed to buy. and he went and bought it, and he just couldn't shoot it. It wasn't his cup of tea, and now he's kind of gone through the whole 360 and tried a bunch of scopes, and now he likes the Burris. So I'm like, hell, I'll give it a try. I'm not against anything, but my problem is I haven't found one to really look through to see if I really like it. So I'm biting the bullet, and hopefully I can resell it. But
Well, and the one thing I like about Jose with that is he'll tell you it's not the best scope. To him, it's the best scope for the money.
Yeah, for the value.
And that's what he'll say is to him it wasn't worth owning a more expensive scope, and that did everything he wanted at a price he could afford 4 of them instead of 2, right?
Yeah.
And that matters. You got to qualify that. I like the XTR3 I played with. He actually let me borrow one for like 6 months while he was waiting for a rifle to get done. It was a pretty sweet scope.
Yeah, and I think that's another problem. I guess I can hit on that real quick is who you ask. Because I have that problem. I've been a scope snob for a long time. I've had some of the best scopes ever made, offered to me. And then I look through lower scopes and I'm like, oh, that's all garbage. Just because I don't know any better, because I've only ever looked through the high end, ultra, $3,000 plus scopes. So when I get down into the lower ones, you've also got to understand who you're asking the questions to. And you've got to ask people that, are used to that scope. Is it really in that price range? Is it really good for what it is? So just some ideas when you guys post on, groups or Facebook or whatever as you're listening, what to look for, what to ask about. And like I said, go to your local Sportsman, Shields, Cabela's, wherever, grab them and look through them and see what you really like. I'm going to share the page. I know you guys listen on the podcast aren't going to be able to see it, but I'm going to share it. We're going to go through some of these questions. We're going to talk about them. I'm going to say this segment is brought to you by Falcor Defense. Falcor's come on huge, Jason and the crew. Great guys. I've had Jason on the podcast before, listened to it. I can't remember how many before, but they were the ultimate in the 300 Win Mag AR game. They've done a lot of innovation. They do a lot of cool stuff. They've come out with the bolt action, and they've come out with a chassis and a bunch of other stuff. So go check it out, because I know for sure you're definitely going to be interested in that action. I just picked one up, and for the action, it's in that category of, you think they've been building actions for years. I mean, they just thought through a lot of it. They asked the right questions and they asked the right people. So it's a phenomenal action. Go check it out. It's the Falcor 7 action. But I'm going to share my page real quick, and we're going to go through some of these questions. And you guys can help me find some of these questions. You guys have looked through them, but let's talk about this one. I hear this a lot, and it's flat-faced or curved, and why. And I have my opinion. I'll let you guys go first. What about you, Jonathan?
I've become a fan of the flat-face trigger. I ran curve for a long time, mainly out of requirement than anything. But I've messed with a couple of flat-face triggers, and I think the main reason I've started to like them more is you tend to have a little bit more surface area. Like, they're a little bit fatter width wise than a lot of the curve triggers, which I just think feels more natural. Yeah, I mean, that's really, it's all just a personal preference. I can't say there's one like quantifiable difference between them besides the shape. It's just personal preference.
What about you, Justin, as a hunter? What would you do?
I actually shoot flats on all of mine as well. I feel like, and it's dumb because it's mechanically it's wrong, but like, it gives you a little bit of variance on where your finger goes too. So like, if Jonathan holds the rifle a little bit different than me, and he gets behind my gun with a flat trigger, it still feels more like he feels more consistent every trigger pull, even though the pull weight in theory changes as you move up and down that trigger. But I did shoot a pro curved diamond the other day from Trigger Tech, and that thing was sweet. Like, I did enjoy going back to that curved trigger, but all of mine are flat. I like how they look. They're easy to get behind. They feel the same on all my guns. So I've become a fan of the flat.
Yeah, and I think this kind of falls under what we were just talking about with scopes. Like, in the last 5-7 years, everything has come so far that before, like the first flat trigger might have been from a really reputable company, and it was a solid trigger that also happened to have a flat shoe on it. Where now I think there's so many solid products out there. It's not necessarily that one's better than the other.
Right. And I'll give this point of view, coming from a gunsmithing standpoint. I think a lot of it is how somebody tunes that trigger to the action as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of actions have different trigger hangers. A lot of actions have, different interfaces with how they interface with the bolt, the way the sear releases the bolt. Timney kind of had that issue with the Calvin Elite, and they changed it with the hit. But I'm kind of with you guys. I've gone to the flat a lot recently, especially more, in my opinion, in the chassis, because the way the chassis changes your hand point or the way your point interacts with the chassis, my hand turns a lot more, and I can actually push back on the trigger a little bit better than necessarily the squeeze that you hear about a lot. Now, if you watch a lot of the big name shooters, they've all got their own way. If you watch Steve Eames, he's got this little bolt underneath that he holds on to. Each one have found their own way to really engage the same way with the trigger each time, because you always hear about trigger press, right? Trigger press, follow through, hold, all that stuff. So it's hard. If you find a good gunsmith that can truly tune that trigger, I think in my opinion, you're going to be happy with about whatever you put on it. Now we can get into mechanicals. That's a whole nother discussion. I just want to talk about flat faced or curved, but I really like the curved in a stock because my hand, the way I hold a stock is different than the way my hand interacts with the chassis. So I kind of go both ways, and I've been a really big fan of that, the Timney Calvin Elite adjustable, because you can change the trigger shoes on them to whatever you like. I mean, you can turn it, you can adjust it forward and back. You can do a lot of different things. So that's kind of one of those triggers that I've always enjoyed. But I think I'm kind of with you guys. I'm with that flat face trigger. I like it.
Yeah. And speaking of that, honestly, my favorite trigger was the one that was on the Tub 2000. I think it was an Anschutz, but it was one of those rounded ones. So it was essentially a flat, but it was a tube for the shoe instead of like a flat piece of metal.
It's a pin, right? A cylinder.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved that trigger, partially because it was like the most crisp two-stage that I had ever felt. It was freaking amazing. Like you could sit there and bounce off of the second wall, and it was still like a 10-ounce second wall, but you could sit there and bounce it off of it without it going off. It was fantastic. I loved it.
And that's how the Timney Calvin Elite is, because you can either put a shoe on it or you can put that straight pole that's knurled. So, and then you can actually turn it one way or another, so you can engage with it a little bit different. But I don't know if I'd hunt with it. I guess I'd have to try it and see. But it's one of those things that I'm completely different when I plan my hunting guns compared to my precision guns. And I don't know why. I probably shouldn't be, because you get used to shooting one thing and you're fine, either way. But I don't know, it's weird like that. Garrett. So Garrett asked this question. We talked about it a little bit. Garrett's one of our moderators at LRT. And he kind of talked about how the heck to teach his kids. Now, I've had this discussion with my little boy, how to tell him what he's aiming at. And one of the tools that I found was the phone scope vision, because I can look right at the side of it, see exactly what he's aiming at, and I can explain it. And there's a lot of other ones out there. Jonathan did a review a while back on the trigger cam, which was phenomenal. That trigger cam's badass. Mm-hmm. The new one just dropped.
I'm super jelly. I want one.
Yeah, I heard it. I heard it goes in. It like records in 4K and everything. So
yeah,
we might have to get a few of those for reviews. I'm gonna have to try and work some magic, but that's something else. But so back to what I was talking about. So she's got this burst optic. She's got this reticle in it. He's trying to explain it. In my opinion, that reticle that he's got on there is a little too busy for a kid. I think he probably should start, a little bit less, because hell, I still don't understand a turret half the time or a reticle half the time, and I shoot all the time. But, which explains where I place half the time, because I don't pay attention. But we won't go there. But so what do you guys think? Like, so Justin, you've got kids, you've shot with them. you've done everything. What are some tips that you can give everybody that that has helped you teach your kids?
So I'll get crucified for this. For one, I don't want my kid doing a holdover. That's what turrets are for. When they're learning to shoot, center the reticle every time. You dial the wind, you dial the elevation, you make it simple for them, right? So that's the stage my kids are at. Right? As your kids get a little older and you want to start to introduce them to that type of topic, is where I'll get just roasted. But BDC reticles are incredibly intuitive for a child to start to learn trajectory. Right? They can see that you've got 100, 300, 500. They start to understand what the trajectory looks like downrange. And that's how I learned. Like, and it made a big difference for me to start to understand and bracket, but it's no different what you do with a bow, right? People want to complain about it in rifles and then they go shoot bows with 7-pin sights and do the same thing. So I kind of like the BDC from a teaching perspective because they visually see a trajectory. Now, it doesn't matter if the lines are 200, 3, 4, 5 exactly, right? But they can start to kind of interpolate that. Then when you get to this level where now you're using an actual mill-based reticle, it's teaching them that they got to read a number off a chart and find the corresponding number in a reticle, right? And to me, that's just an additional step. But the hardest part is they've got to know, like, you got to be able to see what they're doing. So someone in that thread actually had printouts on an overlay where you could hold it on the target and kind of move around. That's genius, right? Because now they can practice just by holding it on a table and kind of understand what it's looking for. I just bought the new it's not new, but the DFAT indoor trainer, and I'm going to either get a scoped vision or try and get one of those target cams that Solinsky has, because I want to be able to teach my kids inside, like, hey, find the deer number 3 on this target or whatever, hold this, right? If you're teaching them holdovers, it would just make it so much easier to be able to see what they're looking at.
Yeah, so I think there was a lot of really good information on that thread. I jumped on it a couple of times. The printouts were really awesome. Guys that were printing their reticles on just laminated paper. Another guy used a page protector, printed out the reticle on an 8x10 piece of paper, and then traced it on a page protector. And that was like his super cheap way to have an overlay of the reticle. I thought that was a really good idea. The camera systems, regardless of what you use, are awesome from an instructor standpoint. Like, I've talked to other instructors about it that actually hopefully we'll be getting the new trigger cam because it can connect to multiple devices. So you can literally have an instructor and the student both recording with the new trigger cam, and the instructor can be staring at his phone up the firing line or behind him, wherever, watching exactly what they're doing. And I've been able to pick up a lot of my mistakes, watching my footage back, shots that I jerked that I didn't at the time didn't think I had jerked off the target, and I was like, oh, that was just a bad round, and nope, went right where my reticle was pointing. I just didn't see it. I do disagree with Justin on the BDCs thing. I hate BDCs. I hate them in principle. I get what you're saying though. It does make sense from a stepping, like, trying to think of the words, and I just completely lost my train of thought.
Progression,
like
right?
Progression. Yeah, it makes sense, but I think with like overlays and stuff, I think most kids would be able to understand the progression when you're giving them dope versus saying hold the 200-yard line at 200. I think they would understand, like, oh, you're going to hold your 200-yard dope, and you hand them a chart. But I don't have kids, so I've taught a lot of kids, but mainly for high power. That was what I taught junior clinics for, was high power, which is a completely different beast, because that's more or less, it's not BDCs, but it's just like, oh, this is your dope, and that's all they know. They have to memorize 4 of them. There's nothing in between.
Right. And I think I'm going to do something kind of in between that. Now, there are some scopes out there. I'm trying to think which one I have. Vortex has some really basic ones. You've got like one, and I can't remember what the name of the reticle is, but it's got like holdovers of like 2 MOA, 4 MOA, 6 MOA, stuff like that, to where if you set out enough steel, they can kind of understand that that's where they're doing, and I still dial a lot in matches. I do need to start learning how to use my turret more, because I keep buying H59s and then I don't use the stupid things. It just makes absolutely no sense. But I kind of agree with you both. There's definitely something there that they can do, and I think like the reticle in front of them kind of helps them understand, what they're dialing, I guess you could say. So you're dialing 2, or you can hold 2. You're dialing 6, or you can hold 6, type thing. So I don't know. That's a good talk. But if you guys want to see more, it's on the long range tactics group. Hold on, my phone's going off. Let's scroll down. Let's see what else. What else have you guys seen in the group that piqued your interest?
The scope one was the big one I wanted to hit on. Because there's that other post about the 50% off cert.
Yeah,
Just devolved.
Yeah, had to be the band hammer on that one.
Yeah, that just comes back to, for all you listening, don't be a dick. Like, it doesn't matter what page you're on. Don't be a dick.
Oh, that's straight from Jonathan. Don't be a dick.
Yeah. Rule number 1. It's rule number 1 of life.
Hey, look, there we are. Look, it's alive too.
Reminds
me of, there's so many of these. Trying to decide on an optic. It's like, oh goodness gracious, people.
Well, that's the problem, right? People. So that's an issue we've already seen in that group too. Of there's good people that don't post in there anymore because they're already sick of the beginner questions.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is that's who the majority of the shooters are in these groups.
Yep.
Right? And they've joined these groups to learn. And so even though they ask the same question over and over and over, it's because it's new to them. It's their first time, and people are like, use the search button. Well, they don't feel the search button answered their question, right? But they don't ask the question any better than the first question they got answered that didn't answer their question. So anyway, specific questions. Definitely a big pro Facebook tip. Ask good questions.
I wish there was a better way inside the group to, over here on the popular topic side. There's, a lot of like what we've heard the most of, and I need to do better at pushing them over there, but it amazes me. I wish that I could create different places. Like, here's the beginner thread. Here's the intermediate thread, and here's the expert. Like, I'm the baddest thing on the planet. I shoot, awesome type thread, but I'm still got to figure that stuff out. Let me keep scrolling. We've gone through a lot of it. Let's see. I can't believe it's almost 10,000 people already.
Yeah, that page has been growing real quick.
Yep. It's a good thing. So if you're listening and you're not part of the Long Range Tactics group, join it. We keep it clean. There's a bunch of us watching it. Ooh. Safari and Vectronics Terrapin X.
Was that the one someone asked for a rangefinder advice? I don't remember.
Mm-hmm. That is a good question. So I've got 5 rangefinders now, right? And every one of them's pissed me off for some reason or other. 2 of them won't read when it's sunny and there's snow on the ground. Don't get me started on it. It just drives me nuts. The Applied Bliss or the I can't think. The SIG ones are great, but you got to figure out where in the circle you get hold. What have you guys found that you really like as far as rangefinders?
I run a SIG 2400 ABS, and if I lost it, that would be the rangefinder I buy again, at least today. I assume that they'll come out with something better soon because I feel that's kind of due for an update. Gunworks also mentioned when they were on the podcast that they're working on an updated rangefinder, and I'll be curious to see what their 3rd gen technology essentially is at that point. But they're still just rangefinders. People have to remember that they're electronics, they fail.
Yeah.
They all have their pros and their cons. But the thing that amazes me is, like, I remember I spent like $400 or $500 on my first rangefinder. It was a Bushnell Elite 1500. It was huge, and it ranged 600 yards.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you'd maybe get 1,000 on a really good day, like shooting a car. But my 2400 ABS, like, I've ranged chucks at 1,600 yards consistently. Now that's in the mountains where I've got a fairly good backdrop, but it's the rangefinder I like. It's the right size for me, right? It's incorporated ballistics, quick ranging, pretty much every time out to 1,000, regardless of conditions. It's rare that I get it to fail under that, and it does what I want it to do.
All right. What are you running, Jonathan?
I've got the Bushnell 1 mile arc, and I honestly, for the price I paid for it, I couldn't be happier. Is it the best rangefinder out there? No. Is it the smallest one? No. But I mean, I think I paid $250 like 4 or 5 years ago for it. It was like stupid cheap. I've lased a pickup truck at 1,800. I can reliably laze targets out to about 1,200. It says it'll laze deer out to I think 700 because apparently deer have like some super secret stealth technology and defeat laser rangefinders. Um, but I've been more than happy with it. Just like Jose's video that he put up on the page, you still have to kind of calibrate where in the circle it lazes. So mine tends to laze a little bit higher in the than center of the circle. Where I think Jose was with his what was his a sig, he was lazing with like bottom edge of it.
Mm-hmm. Every one of my sticks are like that. Every one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one thing that I think a lot of people don't understand because I had a conversation at my last 22 clinic I ran talking about that very video that Jose put up, and like everyone had this like oh shit moment where they had mislazed a target. They all like 4 or 5 of them, like you could see they knew exactly what happened because they mislazed the target and missed it, and they realized that was why, because they were lazing with the center of the circle or dot or whatever they were using, and they had never actually checked where it was lazing. So that's one thing. Definitely go do that. I honestly don't know what I would replace it with though. Is if it broke on me or if I had to get it replaced, I don't know what I would switch it with because I've been using that thing for so long. Like I just haven't kept up with what else is out there because I don't want to drop the money because I'm a cheapskate. But I've been really happy with that Bushnell.
And I think you really got to decide what you want your rangefinder to do. Some guys just want range, others want to integrate with a Kestrel, some want fully integrated ballistics right in there. You have to figure out what you need, and then unfortunately they're not cheap. Like they're cheaper than they were, but by the time you start buying stuff that integrates, you know, you're gonna be spending some money, but it's worth it. Can't hit what you can't range.
Yeah, and if I in my opinion, if SIG would come out with a freaking crosshair or something that you knew exactly what you're aiming at, like the Terrapins, I'd be a lot happier with the ones I've got. I'm just to that point. I'm like, do I sell some of them and go to the Terrapin because I know the freaking thing works? You know, and we could get into a whole discussion on this because I know a lot of antelope hunters. There's only a few rangefinders that really work with like antelope hunting because it's so flat. There's like nothing to hit off of, especially when you get mirage and stuff. But yeah, I guess I'm with you, Justin. I'm happy with what for the price. I'm extremely happy with what my SIGs do. Now, during my match last year, you know, and I'll eat the shit on this. I ranged a bunch of targets. I ranged them with 2 rangefinders. They were both SIGs. And some of my targets were off, and some of them I didn't range correctly. Some of them I ranged at the bottom of the target, which a lot of people do. They'll, you know, try to go to the very bottom of the target, range the hill, different things. And I had a couple guys with Terrapins do the same thing. And then what I did was I went to the target and ranged back, and I parked the bus there. So I had a giant freaking target. Every one of us were wrong. So I guess another thing that you all need to understand is there's always going to be a variable of you're not going to have it right. You're going to be within plus or minus so many yards, and you've got to understand, I guess, where your gun, you know, hits. Like if you're plus or minus 20 yards, that might be quite a bit to a lot of guns. It might not. Depends on how flat they shoot. But that's one thing you've got to look at when you're buying a rangefinder is what I guess the application is going to be. You're just going to be ranging still. Are you going to be ranging animals? Are you going to be ranging antelope a lot? What are you going to be ranging? So that's definitely a question that you need to ask when you post up stuff like that.
Well, and then you got to learn to use it. So you have to get your rangefinder solid. No one pulls up on a 1,000-yard target with a rifle freehand and expects it. Well, I shouldn't say no one, right? Some people can, but generally speaking, you're not going to freehand a 1,000-yard target with your rifle, but they expect to do it with a rangefinder. So if you throw it in one of the little mounts on your tripod or throw it over a bag that you can measure with, it greatly increases your consistency with that. So then you just have to watch out, make sure your pinkies or whatever don't get in front of the rangefinder, because inevitably I'll get pissed that mine can't pick something up and I realize my fat finger's sitting in front of it.
Yep. I know exactly how that goes. I always do that. Like even in my cameras that I take pictures with, I see my dang fingers all the time. I'm like, I wonder how many times I actually do that, where I screw something up with a picture. But yeah, and I think that's a definite takeaway for you guys that are listening is, get a good mount. I invested. I found one of the local guys here that was doing 3D, like 3D mounts. They were ultra cheap. They weren't that much. They screw into a base plate, into an arc plate. I can lock them into my tripod real quick. A lot of the guys are running like the mubs and the hubs and different things, and you can lock them in. I think that's definitely one of those things that you need to invest in, is some way to adapt it to your tripod so that,
there's cheap ways to do it. So I just started running a 300 millimeter Arca plate that I got off Amazon for like, I think it was $19 or like $25. I've got my binos on there. I've got my rangefinder on there. I've got my cell phone holder. So when I'm recording stages, I can throw it on there and I don't have to swap anything out.
Right. Yeah. Yep. I think we've had a great discussion today. We've been here for an hour. We've covered a lot of topics. I appreciate both these guys for coming on. Long range tactics is kind of the place where you can go and not get attacked. You can go learn. We all do it because we love it. The whole thing behind long range tactics is where passion meets precision. It's a saying. It's not necessarily saying. It's kind of our motto. It's the way we do things. We're passionate about what we do. We've got hunters in there. We've got long range shooters. We've got, everything. So if it's somewhere that you want to go where you feel like, hey, these are the good old boys, the OG type stuff, to where you think you can feel comfortable coming in and posting your questions, check out Long Range Tactics group, longrangetactics.com, or, follow us on Facebook or Instagram. They're, like I said, they're going to be a fixed part of the Long Range Addicts podcast because we are kind of one in the same. So we're excited about that. You're going to see a lot more of these guys on the podcast. Bring them on. These guys have a lot of knowledge when it comes to long range shooting. And that's the cool thing, is they're willing to share it. They're happy to share it. They're not going to yell at you for asking questions. And it's kind of that exciting thing that we've kind of gone through, and we're going to continue growing. We've grown so much since we started in 2020, 2021. Like I said, we're almost 10,000 people in the group. We're growing like crazy. The website's going like crazy. Follow them on YouTube. There's a ton of great reviews on YouTube. So if you want to see some good reviews on YouTube, we're going to start doing some more training. Jonathan, do a quick tell us about Distinguished Tactical.
Yeah, sure. So Distinguished Tactical is my company. I do firearms training from brand new shooters that have never held a gun before all the way up to competition for a couple of different disciplines. The thing that I'm running currently has been 22 courses. So I'm about to run my second long-range precision 22 course here next weekend that essentially breaks everything down for NRL/PRS 22 type competitions. It's not designed for brand new shooters. I typically require that my guys have shot a type of competition before. It doesn't matter if it's rifle or pistol. It's mainly just so I don't spend the first 2 hours going over like safe weapons handling. Now, not to flag people, and it's not the intent of that course. It's a little bit more advanced than that. But yeah, we'll be running that next weekend, going over everything from zeroing to truing, reading wind with smoke grenades. Which is I found is the best way to teach wind classes, is have someone downrange with a smoke grenade, and then they read a wind speed with a Kestrel over a radio to the firing line. So that way, as people are looking at it, they're getting a no shit what the actual wind speed is at the thing they're looking at. So they can compare that to Veg and Mirage and all that, instead of just guessing, looking 800 yards away, and they're basing it off the wind speed where they're at. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's what I do with Distinguished Tactical.
Yeah, and you were out of Virginia, so you East Coasters, yep. That's where you need to go. We're going to be doing an episode here coming up about who we kind of recommend to go to. There's There's so many Tom, Dick, and Harry freaking training courses out there, and I would not touch half of them with a 10-foot pole and Justin's chocolate milk cup. It's just one of those things. Like, you've got to understand where you're going. You've got to talk to some people. And I kind of want to go over that, and I'm going to invite some of the guys from Long Range Tactics to join me. We're going to talk about training and what you need to look for, who you need to look for, and stuff like that, because they're getting more and more expensive. So it's one of those things. So check out Distinguished Tactical. I know he's on Facebook, and you can message him there. He's been doing a lot of stuff, Long Range Tactics, some educational stuff, and we're excited to keep seeing what we're doing. And we better see some freaking content from Justin this weekend. If he slays some stuff, I might have to hurry and send him a phone scope system or something so that he can record it or whatever he's going to do. But then I might have to take the bus up there. We need to do some shooting off the top of the bus where you can just sit up there under. I've built it so the canopy sits on top of it. So all you do is zip tie the canopy to the rack so you can sit up on top. It's got a little bit of movement in it, but it's good.
I need to get some Southern Idaho chucks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the problem is you just got to get the bus to it. But the bus goes a lot of places people don't think it does. So it's one of those things. Well, I appreciate you guys for joining me. It's great to talk about long range. It's great to talk about our passion. I appreciate you guys joining me.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Thanks everybody for listening. I'm going to try to do better at getting my freaking podcast weekly, because I know a lot of you are yelling at me because I haven't been very good. It's just been craziness lately. To leave you, I'm going to leave you with a code. Ballistics20 will get you 20% off a Cryptech order. So it's a one-time use code per person. You go on there, you check out, enter Ballistics20, you get 20% off your order. And there's a lot of good stuff. I just got my order in. I'm wearing my hat. These things are sexy. Appreciate you all for joining us. Thanks, and hope to see you next week.
Don't be afraid to pipe up. Send us your questions or topics and we'll cover them on the show. Thanks for listening.